Hello and welcome to the last mixtape. My name's Stephen White, and on this week's show, we investigate the state versus the stage, Mo Chara, Kneecap, and the criminalisation of art. But first, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Not my words, but the words of Stephen Biko. Why, dear listener, and indeed, dear viewer, am I quoting anti-apartheidist activist Stephen Biko at the beginning of this week's show? Well, dear listener, and indeed, dear viewer, this week we'll be delving into the stage versus the state, Mo Chara, Kneecap, and the criminalisation of art. Following on from our series of episodes covering this very subject, we will now delve into how the door has been opened for the criminalisation of art and indeed art spaces. What do we do when art, subtext and context fall into the hands of politicians? Belfast, 2025. Liam Og Ohana, better known as Mo Chara, one third of the incendiary rap group Kneecap, has been charged under the UK's Terrorism Act. The allegation that during a performance at London's O2 Forum in Kentish Town on November 21st, 2024, he displayed a Hezbollah flag in a manner that aroused reasonable suspicion of support of a prescribed organisation. The Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command initiated an investigation after a video of the incident surfaced online in April. Following a review, the Crown Prosecution Service authorised the charge. Mo Chara is scheduled to appear at Westminster's Magistrate Court on June 18th. Kneecap is known for provocative performances that blend satire, political commentary and cultural critique. Their art challenges authority, pokes at the establishment and gives voice to marginalised communities. This charge raises questions. Where is the line between performance and provocation, between dissent and criminality? The timing is notable. Kneecap is slated to perform at major festivals this summer, including Glastonbury on June 27th. The charge casts uncertainty over the appearances and ignites a broader conversation about artistic freedom and the state of power. The following is a statement from Kneecap themselves. 14,000 babies are about to die of starvation in Gaza, with food sent by the world sitting on the other side of a wall. And once again, the British establishment is focused on us. We deny this offence and we vehemently defend ourselves. This is political policing. This is a carnival of distraction. We are not the story, genocide is. As they profit from genocide, they use anti-terror law against us for displaying a flag thrown on stage. A charge not serious enough even to warrant their Crown Court. Instead, a court that doesn't even have a jury. What's the objective? To restrict our ability to travel, to prevent us from speaking to young people across the world, to silence voices of compassion, to protest artists who dare speak out. Instead of defending innocent people or the principles of international law they claim to uphold, the powerful in Britain have abetted slaughter and famine in Gaza, just as they did in Ireland for centuries. Then, like now, they claim justification. The IDF units they arm and fly spy plane missions for are the real terrorists. The whole world can see it. We stand proudly with the people. You stand complicit with war criminals. We are on the right side of history. You are not. We will fight you in your court. We will win. Free Palestine. Kneecap. If Mo Chara and Kneecap's performance is about terrorism, what about a playwright depicting military life? A filmmaker exploring radicalisation? A musician referencing other historical conflicts? Art thrives in ambiguity. And when the state and when politicians jump in, that's where that is all stripped away and taken away from us. This is a dangerous road we are walking down and a dangerous door that has been opened. By calling what Kneecap have done on stage or what Mo Chara has been alleged to have done on stage is going into that field, is going into artistic spaces and saying what is right, what is wrong, what is contextual, what is subtext, what is meaning, what doesn't. And that means that a judge and a jury or whomever would be the ones to decide that. And what does that mean for all art beyond that? I speak as well to the people who may not agree with my own political leanings, those that might see me as woke or whatever nonsense came up in the comments in the last couple of things. Fine, whatever you want to think is what you want to think. However, think about it from your own perspective. What about the art that you love? What about the things that speak to you? What about the performance pieces that speak to you? If they are taken away, your voice is also censored. As I said on numerous occasions, I don't like politicians. I don't like them at all. Most of them make my skin crawl, and in no way would I want any of them, in any way, touching art in any way, or deciding what is or what isn't art, because they lack the capacity to do so, even the ones that pretend they do. And I don't care what side of whatever political aisle they are on. The meaning that any politician or any government body can come in and say what is criminal or what has meaning or what is context within art is a dangerous, dangerous road. As I said at the beginning of this is one of the few places where expression of any form is allowed and is considered within the context of itself and within the context of its performance. I've said it a million times. Johnny Cash never killed a man just to watch him die. That was not a confession of murder in any way by him. Morrissey did not want us to go out and start hanging DJs because of his song, and he is on a very different political side of the aisle than I am. But in no way do I think that that's what he meant. Division, the meaning of their name is stripped all from its own meaning of where it's originated from. It's in the same way people are going, oh, well, they're called Kneecap, X, Y, and Z. Once again, subtext, subversion, situationalism, all of these things have meaning. The most literal of people to go around and decide what is and isn't art, whether or not you agree with it. It's a different thing. You can not like art. You can push it to one side and say, that's not for me. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with its political ideology. That is fine. But you don't get to decide if it should be censored or shouldn't be censored. That is such a dangerous road to walk down. The courtroom has never been a neutral space for artists. When art walks in, truth often walks out. The charges are rarely about real crimes. They're about power, discomfort, and control. In the Soviet Union, they locked up poets. In Putin's Russia, it was Pussy Riot. Their crime, a punk prayer in a cathedral, a performance that challenged the unholy marriage of church and state. They are dragged from the altar into a cell because art, even in a balaclava, tells the truth. And truth, in a brittle empire, is dangerous. Fela Kuti had his entire compound burned down, his mother, a national hero, thrown from a second-story window by soldiers. Why? Because he sang songs that held up a mirror to Nigeria's military dictatorship. Jump to the 90s. Ice-T's cop killer caused a moral panic. NWA had the FBI writing letters over fuck the police. Black artists became America's public enemy number one. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were saying something true about the danger already in the system. Even John Lennon, who once said the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, was put under FBI surveillance. His peace activism made him a threat. What we're seeing with Mo Chara isn't an anomaly, it's a continuation. The question isn't why this is happening, it's why it keeps happening. Because when you criminalise art, you criminalise dissent. And when you criminalise dissent, you redefine democracy as a performance with only one acceptable script. There's also precedent where this wasn't the case. London, late 70s, Siouxsie Sioux dons a swastika armband not as an endorsement but as a provocation, a mirror held up to society eager to forget its own complicity. Noted in The Guardian, these symbols were not endorsement but provocations designed to expose how little the establishment had truly reckoned with its own authoritarian streak. No arrests, no trials, just outrage and discourse. Contrast that with Mo Chara's current predicament and the disparity becomes glaring. Shane MacGowan sang songs of outlaws and martyrs. Paddy's Public Enemy number one wasn't just a song, it was a narrative of resistance, echoing the tale of Dominic McGlinchey. The Pogues faced bans for Streets of Sorrow and the Birmingham Six, a song challenging wrongful imprisonment, yet they played on. Kneecap inherits this legacy, blending satire with sharp political commentary. Their art doesn't just entertain, it interrogates. And that is why I wanted to do this week's episode on follow-up on what's happened with Mo Chara and the charges of a terrorism offence against him. It's incredibly important that in this moment in time, and I said so in the previous episodes, that this is a door that's being opened and it's not one that I in any way agree with. In no way do I think that Kneecap or Mo Chara or anyone involved with them or their band is promoting violence in the same way that I would never promote violence. The idea of what we're talking about here, and as I said on numerous occasions, there are people who will talk about the political situations far better and far greater depth with far better meaning than I do, or that I can ascribe, or historical background that I can ascribe, that will talk to you about the genocide in Palestine in a far greater and more detailed way. Where I'm coming from this is from the artistic and the expression side of it, and the idea of protest. We were speaking a couple of weeks ago about the idea of, in the year where Bob Dylan, a movie about Bob Dylan and his protest music is lauded in this kind of, angelical way of like, oh my God, how amazing he was and how brave he was and great he was. And I do think those things about Bob Dylan. It's interesting that in the same year when people are trying to protest against violence, against the death of children, against the starvation of an entire people. And I think that's a lot of why Irish people have such a connection with this in such a strong way, because we understand it, because it is something that has happened to us. I think that's why it's interesting in a lot of ways, the British media's reaction to this and the stripping of Mo Chara's name and the anglicisation of it as well is something of great concern. I think in any way art being put on trial, or artists being put on trial, or the idea of as we say, like John Lennon or people like that, in the past it has happened, being bugged by Richard Nixon, being seen as dangerous. Why are artists seen as dangerous? Why is this the thing that gets attacked in a world where this is happening? People are dying. That is not up for debate. That is actually what is happening in this moment in time in this region. People are dying because of the consequences, or because of the IDF, because of the Israeli government. And for artists to be held in far higher account than anybody involved in that, than anybody who's funding that, than anybody who's sitting and letting that happen, that they are the ones that are being put on trial for what they said, but those other people are not being held accountable, the people who are in actual positions of power. Stressing as well, I saw in the comments in the last couple of people arguing against this, and arguing against because they can only see their maybe through their hatred for Kneecap, maybe through their own kind of prism. But I really appeal to those people looking at it this way, as the censorship of art, the censorship of expression, performance art, in any means, in any spectrum, from any side of the aisle, is wrong. It is dangerous, and it shouldn't happen. Protesting and expression through art is one of the few ways, and one of the most powerful ways, we as a society speak. Not to harp on about it, but in a review that I did of a band I didn't like, and I didn't like their music, and I didn't like their socio-political politics or outlook, I said that I disagreed with censorship in any way, because art says something about who we are in that moment in time, be it good or be it bad, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, but it says something. And that is the most important thing. And if we start putting people on trial for that in a kind of like a kangaroo court, or the court of public opinion, or whatever, that is such a dangerous road to walk down. And it's a door that can never be closed once we've opened it. Once the precedent is set, what else does it extend to? Whether you like Kneecap or whether you agree with Kneecap, this isn't about Kneecap anymore, especially in the realms of Palestine and the people and the suffering of the people of Gaza. It is no longer, and it has never been, about Kneecap. They are just bringing attention to a situation. They are talking about a situation. In the idea of expression and within art, it's bigger than Kneecap as well. If this follows through, if this door that has now been partially opened, if it is fully walked through, we are in a world in which subtext, context, nuance, and meaning of art can be warped by political people, by politicians, can be used by them to punish people. It can be used by them to silence people. It can be said, hey, don't try it, because if you do, this is what happens to you. This is the full weight of what we have in store for you if you try stand against us. We will go through everything, we will find a way, and we will haul you up in front of a court, or in front of the authorities, or whatever it is. It is so important more than ever to call this out, because it is such a slippery slope, and we are seeing it all over the world. We are seeing it all over the world. And I know I am Irish. I come from the Republic of Ireland. I am not in Britain. I am not there. I am not I am not subject to that in any way. But we also in Ireland have to be careful of that too. Art is one of the most powerful ways we as a public can express to authorities, regardless of where we're coming from, our displeasure, our thoughts, our criticisms of that. And once we silence that, we have walked into a very, very dangerous road. I think there's a clip by Chuck D, a Public Enemy, speaking about what's the first thing authoritarian regimes do when they take control. And it's they silence the radio stations. And it kind of the meaning, I suppose, in a more modern context of that is they silence artists, they silence expression, they silence criticism, they silence things that can get to people. And I've seen in performances of Kneecap recently, they are calling that out. They're saying they're frightened of what Kneecap would do if they got on stage at Glastonbury and did what they did at Coachella. It's fear that's driving this more than anything else. And that says something. That says something about them and says something about what's happening. And we can't let that fear control what it is we do and how we express ourselves as people. At some point, someone always tries to turn art into evidence. A verse becomes an admission, a stage costume becomes an ideology, and a song becomes a weapon. And the further you drift from comfort, the closer you come to that edge, where language is misquoted, meaning is misread, and a state listens to not what you're saying, but to how afraid it makes them feel. This isn't new, but it's never not dangerous, because once this door has been opened, where intent no longer matters and symbolism is treated like confession, and the impact will be felt by any artist, any voice, and any kid with a mic with something honest to say. So where does this leave us? Maybe it's here, on the edge of a courtroom and a stage, where one performance is judged as art and the other is judged as a threat. And maybe the most dangerous thing you can do in 2025 is tell the truth in your own language. Art isn't always comfortable, and it doesn't always say the most comfortable things about us or our world. But criminalising discomfort should be something we are all concerned about. The right to provoke, the right to challenge, and the right to satirise is fundamental to who we are, and it is fundamental to art and performance in all spaces. As Stephen Biko once said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Art is an expression of the mind, and if we allow it to be oppressed in this way, we have dulled our own weapon beyond repair. And so it goes, and there it went. But before I go, thank you for watching and listening to The Last Mixtape. To help the channel grow, please like, share and subscribe for more episodes like this. And if you want to send your music on to the Count and Monty playlisto, do send them on to stephen@thelastmixtape.com and I will send him on your correspondences. But for now, that was The Last Mixtape. I was Stephen White. You were the listener and the viewer. Hey, so long.